A love that changed everything. Sophia had always been a woman of ambition. Raised in a working-class neighborhood by a single mother who had worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table, she had learned the value of perseverance and independence from an early age. Life had never been easy, but she had never expected it to be. Through hard work and sheer determination, she had built herself into a force to be reckoned with, a self-made businesswoman who had clawed her way up from nothing to create a small yet thriving company. Despite the struggles, she had never complained. She was proud of the life she had built, the security she had earned, and the respect she had commanded. But while she had conquered the world of business, there was one thing she had never quite mastered: love. It wasn't for lack of trying. Over the years, she had dated, had even come close to settling down once or twice, but nothing ever felt quite right. The men she met were either intimidated by her success or eager to benefit from it. Some wanted a trophy wife, others sought a caretaker, but none seemed to truly appreciate her for who she was, a strong, independent woman who refused to compromise her dreams for anyone. And then, she met Daniel. Daniel was different from any man she had ever known. He wasn't intimidated by her success, in fact, he admired it. A hard-working construction engineer with a deep sense of responsibility and family values, he had a quiet strength that both challenged and comforted her. Their relationship blossomed quickly, their love growing strong in a way that felt inevitable, like 2 pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. For the first time in her life, Sophia allowed herself to believe in forever. They got married in a modest yet beautiful ceremony, surrounded by friends and family. It was a love story that felt like it had been written in the stars. They moved into a cozy house in the suburbs, with dreams of starting a family. Everything felt perfect, or at least, that's what Sophia believed. But life had a cruel way of reminding people that perfection was often an illusion. The dream that became a nightmare. 2 years into their marriage, Sophia got pregnant. The news was met with overwhelming joy, especially from Daniel, who had always dreamed of becoming a father. They decorated the nursery, planned names, and imagined the future they would build together. But the pregnancy wasn't easy. Sophia suffered from severe morning sickness, exhaustion, and strange cravings that made her question everything about her body. Yet, she endured. For Daniel. For their future. And then, after hours of excruciating labor, she gave birth to triplets. The delivery room was filled with both shock and celebration. The doctors congratulated her on her miracle, the nurses whispered about the rarity of spontaneous triplets, and Daniel held her hand, beaming with pride. Until he saw them. Sophia would never forget the look on his face. The joy drained from his eyes, his expression hardening into something cold, something unfamiliar. She was too weak to question it at first, too exhausted to process the sudden shift in his demeanor. But as she held her babies in her arms, 3 beautiful boys, healthy and strong, she realized something was terribly wrong. Daniel wasn't happy. He was staring at them with a frown, his body stiff, his jaw clenched. And then, in a voice so cold it sent shivers down her spine, he whispered, "What did you do?" Her heart pounded. What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice hoarse from the pain of childbirth. Daniel's eyes burned with something she had never seen before, betrayal, rage, devastation. "They're not mine," he spat. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Sophia felt like she had been slapped. "What? Of course, they are. Daniel, what are you saying?" But he wasn't listening. He was backing away, shaking his head as if the sight of her and their children was too much to bear. "They don't look like me," he growled. "They're black, Sophia." "I'm not black. You cheated on me." His words hit her like a hammer. Her babies, had darker skin than either of them. Their hair was textured, their features strikingly different from Daniel's. But Sophia knew, deep in her soul, that she had never been unfaithful. Not once. Not ever. Tears blurred her vision as she reached for him. Daniel, please, listen to me. I swear on everything I love, I have never cheated on you. But he wouldn't listen. The accusations flew like daggers, each one cutting deeper than the last. He called her a liar, a disgrace, a woman who had destroyed their marriage. He refused to even look at the babies. He stormed out of the hospital, leaving her alone, broken, and humiliated. The man she loved, the man she had trusted with her heart, had abandoned her at the moment she needed him the most. Thrown to the wolves. Days later, he served her with divorce papers. He refused to believe her pleas, refused to even take a paternity test. To him, the evidence was clear, 3 babies who didn't look like him, born from the woman he once loved. His family turned against her, the rumors spread like wildfire, and the whispers followed her wherever she went. A woman who cheated on her husband and got pregnant with another man's children. No one cared that she was innocent. No one cared that her heart had been shattered into a million pieces. Daniel kicked her out of their home, leaving her with nothing but her babies and the clothes on her back. Sophia found herself alone in a world that had once seemed so full of promise. She had no one to turn to, her business crumbled under the weight of the scandal, her so-called friends distanced themselves, and even strangers looked at her with judgment in their eyes. But if there was one thing she had learned from her mother, it was this: she was a survivor. She held her head high, wiped her tears, and vowed that she would not let this break her. With her 3 beautiful boys in her arms, she walked away from the life she had built with Daniel. And as the years passed, she raised them with love, determination, and the unshakable belief that one day, the truth would come to light. A truth that would shake the very foundation of everything Daniel thought he knew. Rising from the ashes. The day Sophia walked out of Daniel's life with her triplets in her arms was the hardest day of her life. The world she had built crumbled beneath her feet, and the future she had once dreamed of shattered like broken glass. She had no home. No support. No idea how she was going to provide for 3 newborns while drowning in heartbreak. But she refused to let despair consume her. She would fight. Because if there was one thing Sophia had always been, it was a survivor. A new beginning in a cold world. The first few weeks were the most difficult. With nowhere to go, she sought shelter in a women's support center in the city. It was a small, overcrowded place meant for women fleeing abuse or homelessness. The walls were thin, the air heavy with exhaustion and quiet suffering. But at least it was a roof over their heads. She spent sleepless nights rocking her babies in her arms, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Mommy's going to protect you. Mommy's going to make sure you have a beautiful life. No matter what. But reality was merciless. Finding work as a single mother of 3 infants was next to impossible. Her once thriving business had collapsed, her name dragged through the mud by rumors and betrayal. No company wanted to hire someone with a scandal attached to her name. The money she had left barely covered food. Some nights, she went without eating so her boys wouldn't have to. She never let them see her cry, never let them feel the weight of their struggles. She worked odd jobs, cleaning offices, delivering packages, anything that paid. Every coin she earned went toward diapers, formula, and baby clothes. It was exhausting, backbreaking work. But she never gave up. Then, one fateful day, everything changed. A helping hand in the dark. It was a rainy afternoon when Sophia crossed paths with Mrs. Caldwell, an older woman who had once been a respected lawyer but had since retired. She was volunteering at the shelter when she saw Sophia feeding her babies, exhaustion etched into her face. "You have strong eyes," Mrs. Caldwell had said. Sophia barely had the energy to respond, but the woman continued. "You remind me of myself when I was younger. Tell me your story." Sophia hesitated. She had stopped trusting people. But something about Mrs. Caldwell's presence, her calm, unwavering gaze, made her open up. For the first time, she told her story from the beginning. The love she had for Daniel, the betrayal, the triplets, the accusations, the pain of being abandoned. Mrs. Caldwell listened without judgment. And when Sophia finished, the woman took a deep breath and said, "You're going to prove him wrong." Sophia frowned. "How?" Mrs. Caldwell reached into her bag and pulled out a card. "Because I'm going to help you." Climbing back to the top. Mrs. Caldwell turned out to be more than just a kind stranger. She was well-connected, respected, and fiercely intelligent. With her help, Sophia got a job at a small marketing firm, a fresh start in a world that had tried to bury her. It wasn't easy. She had to juggle work and motherhood, running from meetings to daycare, working late into the night just to make ends meet. But every time she felt like giving up, she looked at her sons, Liam, Noah, and Elijah, and reminded herself why she was fighting. Years passed. Slowly, she rebuilt herself. She worked her way up in the company, proving her brilliance. Within 5 years, she had secured a position as a senior strategist. Within 8, she had saved enough to start her own business again. But success didn't erase the pain of the past. No matter how much she accomplished, the ghost of Daniel's betrayal haunted her. She had raised 3 incredible boys, smart, kind, ambitious. They were everything she had hoped they'd be. But every time she looked at them, she remembered the way their father had rejected them. And the worst part? None of them knew who he was. She had never told them about Daniel. Never mentioned his name. As far as they were concerned, they had always been just the 4 of them. But fate had other plans. Because after 10 long years, Daniel was about to walk back into their lives. And the truth waiting for him would shake him to his very core. A shocking encounter. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. Sophia was at a charity gala, one of many she attended as a successful entrepreneur, when she heard a familiar voice. "Sophia?" She turned. And there he was. Daniel. He looked older. More mature. His once youthful face was now shadowed with faint lines of time. His hair was shorter, his build stronger, but his eyes, the same deep brown eyes she had once loved, held a flicker of something she hadn't seen before. Regret. Sophia's heart pounded, but she forced herself to remain composed. "Daniel." He hesitated, his gaze scanning her face as if searching for something. I didn't expect to see you here." Sophia crossed her arms. "Neither did I. I thought you were done with me 10 years ago." He flinched at her words. "I need to talk to you. Please." For a moment, she wanted to walk away. To leave him drowning in the pain he had caused. But something in his eyes stopped her. So, with a deep breath, she nodded. 5 minutes. That's all you get. The truth that shattered everything. They sat in a quiet corner of the venue, the air thick with unspoken words. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, looking almost nervous. "Sophia, I need to say this, I was wrong. About everything." Sophia let out a bitter laugh. "It took you 10 years to realize that?" His eyes darkened with guilt. "I had a DNA test done." Her heart stopped. "What?" He swallowed hard. "A few months ago, I started having health issues. The doctors suggested checking family history. It made me curious, so I took a DNA test. And Sophia, he exhaled sharply. "I found out I have African ancestry." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Daniel clenched his fists. "My great-grandfather was black. But my family hid it. They erased it from history. When I saw the triplets, I thought," he shut his eyes in frustration. "I thought you betrayed me. But they were mine. They were always mine. The world around Sophia spun. For 10 years, she had carried the weight of his betrayal. For 10 years, he had left their sons fatherless, only to realize now that he had been wrong all along. Rage. Pain. A strange, suffocating relief. A storm of emotions crashed inside her. Daniel's voice broke as he whispered, "I need to see them." Sophia looked him dead in the eye. "You lost that right 10 years ago." His face fell, devastation washing over him. But she wasn't done. Because if Daniel thought he could just walk back into their lives after a decade of abandonment, he was about to learn that forgiveness wasn't so easily given, the cost of regret. Sophia sat there, staring at Daniel, watching the weight of his own guilt crush him. He was a man unraveling, haunted by the revelation that he had abandoned his own children for a lie. But Sophia felt no sympathy. Not yet. Not after 10 years of struggling alone. 10 years of raising 3 incredible boys while carrying the weight of his betrayal. She folded her arms, her voice steady but cold. "You want to see them?" Daniel exhaled sharply, nodding. "Please, Sophia. I know I don't deserve it, but I need to make things right." Sophia leaned forward, her gaze piercing through him. "And how do you plan to do that, Daniel? With an apology? With some excuse about how your family hid the truth from you?" He winced. "I know saying sorry isn't enough." She scoffed. "Not even close." Daniel swallowed hard, running a hand through his hair. "I need to meet them. Even if they hate me, I need to look them in the eyes and tell them the truth." Sophia took a deep breath, steadying herself. "You can't just walk in and pretend the last 10 years didn't happen. They don't even know you exist, Daniel." His face paled. "You never told them about me?" Sophia shook her head. "Why would I? What was I supposed to say? That their father threw them away because of how they looked?" Silence. Daniel stared at his hands, his shoulders sagging under the weight of his own mistake. Sophia knew she had the power to shut him out forever. But deep down, she wasn't just thinking about her own anger, she was thinking about Liam, Noah, and Elijah. Would they want to know him? Would they hate her for keeping him away? A long sigh left her lips. "If you want to meet them, it will be on my terms. My rules. And if you ever hurt them again, I will never forgive you." Daniel's eyes filled with relief. "Anything. I'll do whatever it takes." But neither of them realized that this meeting was going to change everything, in ways neither of them could have imagined. A mother's dilemma. That night, Sophia lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. How could she explain this to her boys? At 10 years old, Liam, Noah, and Elijah had grown up believing they only had one parent. They never asked about their father, and Sophia never brought it up. She had been their entire world. Now, that world was about to be shaken. The next morning, as they sat at the breakfast table, Sophia took a deep breath. "Boys, we need to talk." They all looked up, their identical brown eyes filled with curiosity. "It's about your father." Their forks clinked against their plates. "Our father?" Liam asked, frowning. Sophia nodded. "His name is Daniel. He was my husband when I had you 3. But, he left before you were born." Elijah tilted his head. "Why?" Sophia hesitated. How could she explain this without breaking their hearts? "He made a terrible mistake," she said carefully. "And he spent years realizing how wrong he was. Now, he wants to meet you." The boys exchanged glances, processing this new information. Noah finally spoke. "Do you want us to meet him?" Sophia's throat tightened. "I want you to decide for yourselves." Silence stretched between them. Then, Liam, the oldest by just 2 minutes, sighed. I guess, we should at least see who he is. Elijah nodded. Yeah. But if he's mean, we don't have to talk to him again, right? Sophia smiled softly. You will never have to do anything you don't want to. They accepted that answer. But Sophia couldn't shake the unease creeping into her chest. Because once she opened this door, there was no going back. The first meeting. The cafe was quiet, tucked away from the busy streets. Sophia sat with her sons in a private booth, waiting. Then, the door opened. Daniel stepped inside. For a long moment, he just stared, taking in the sight of the three boys he had abandoned. They looked so much like him. And yet, they didn't. Their skin was a beautiful, warm brown. Their curly hair framed their faces. But their expressions, sharp, intelligent, guarded, those were all Sophia. Daniel's breath hitched. Sophia stood. Boys, this is Daniel. Your father. The boys looked at him, their faces unreadable. Finally, Liam spoke. Hi. Daniel swallowed hard. Hi. He slowly sat down, his hands trembling. I know this is overwhelming. I don't even know what to say first except. I'm sorry. Silence. The boys watched him carefully. Noah crossed his arms. Why did you leave? Daniel exhaled shakily. Because I was stupid. I was blind to the truth, and I hurt your mother. I hurt you. And I can never take that back. Elijah's lips pressed into a thin line. So why are you here now? Daniel met his gaze. Because I want to be better. I want to know you. If you'll let me. The boys exchanged another glance, silent communication passing between them. Then, Liam sighed. We don't know you. It wasn't cruel. Just honest. Daniel nodded. I know. And I don't expect you to trust me right away. But I want to try. If you'll let me. Sophia watched her sons, waiting. Then, after what felt like an eternity, Noah muttered, maybe. Daniel blinked. Maybe? Liam nodded. Maybe we'll let you try. But you have to earn it. Daniel swallowed the lump in his throat. I will. I swear I will. And in that moment, as Sophia watched her sons take their first cautious steps toward a man they had never known, she realized something. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about them. And only time would tell whether Daniel was worthy of being in their lives again. A father's trial. Daniel left that cafe with a whirlwind of emotions storming inside him. Relief, guilt, fear, so many things he had never confronted in all these years. Seeing his sons for the first time had shaken him to his core. They were his. His flesh and blood. Yet, he was nothing but a stranger to them. Their guarded expressions, their hesitation, it was all deserved. And now, he had to prove himself worthy of the time he had already stolen from them. Sophia's warning. Later that evening, Sophia stood in her kitchen, watching the boys do their homework at the dining table. They were quiet, more thoughtful than usual, and she knew exactly why. Their meeting with Daniel had stirred something in them. She heard a knock at the door and sighed. She already knew who it was. When she opened it, Daniel stood there, hands in his pockets, uncertainty in his eyes. Sophia crossed her arms. What do you want, Daniel? He took a deep breath. I know you don't trust me yet. But I need to know, how do I do this? Sophia narrowed her eyes. You don't get to ask me that. You figure it out. Daniel's jaw tightened. I don't want to mess this up. I already did once, and I can't afford to do it again. Sophia sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. Listen to them. Don't force anything. And if you ever make them feel like they aren't enough, I will never let you near them again. Daniel nodded solemnly. I would never. She studied him for a long moment before stepping aside. Come in. But only for 10 minutes. A tentative bond. When Daniel stepped inside, the boys immediately stopped what they were doing. Their eyes flickered between him and Sophia, unsure of what this visit meant. Daniel swallowed. Hey, guys. Silence. Then, Elijah spoke. Mom, why is he here? Sophia sat down, keeping her voice even. Because he wants to try. The boys exchanged glances. Finally, Noah spoke, his voice skeptical. Try what? Daniel exhaled. To be here. To know you. Liam, ever the leader, tapped his pencil against his notebook. You can't just walk in and be our dad. Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of those words. I know. And I don't expect that. I just want to be someone you know. Elijah raised an eyebrow. Like a test. Daniel smiled a little. If that's what you need it to be. Silence again. Then, Noah leaned back in his chair. Okay. You can take us somewhere. Daniel blinked in surprise. Really? Liam nodded. One day. One trip. If we like you, we'll decide after that. Sophia watched quietly. She wasn't sure if she should be proud of them for setting their own conditions or scared that Daniel would disappoint them again. But this was their decision now. Daniel smiled for the first time. Deal. The first outing. The following Saturday, Daniel picked them up for their first outing together. He had spent the whole week planning, trying to figure out what 10-year-old boys would like. He considered amusement parks, movies, or even a fancy restaurant, but he knew that none of that would earn him trust. So instead, he chose something simple. He took them to a large outdoor activity park, one with obstacle courses, rock climbing, and things they could do together. At first, the boys were hesitant. But as the day went on, Daniel noticed something: they were competitive. Especially Liam. So when they reached the rock climbing area, Daniel smirked. Who thinks they can beat me to the top? Liam's eyes sparked. You're on. Noah and Elijah cheered as they strapped in, and then the race was on. Daniel climbed faster than he had in years, but Liam was relentless. His son had fire in him, a hunger to win that Daniel had never seen before. By the time Liam reached the top first, he grinned triumphantly. Told you. Daniel laughed, breathless. All right. You win. Something shifted in Liam's eyes, acceptance. It wasn't full trust yet, but it was something. And Daniel held onto it like a lifeline. A second chance. By the time the day ended, the boys were exhausted but happy. And Sophia saw it the moment they walked through the door: something had changed. They weren't just tolerating Daniel's presence anymore. They were curious about him. As they went to bed that night, Sophia sat across from Daniel in the living room. She sipped her tea, watching him closely. They like you. Daniel exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Do you? Sophia's grip tightened on her cup. I don't know yet. Daniel swallowed but nodded. That's fair. She studied him for a long moment. You broke me, Daniel. You left me to raise them alone. You walked away because of something that wasn't even real. His face twisted in pain. I know. And I will never forgive myself for it. Sophia placed her cup down. Then don't ask me to forgive you yet. Earn it. Just like you're earning them. Daniel nodded. I will. And for the first time in 10 years, Sophia let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, people really could change. Shadows of the past. Daniel had won a small victory, but he knew the battle was far from over. Liam, Noah, and Elijah had let him in, if only a little. They had agreed to spend time with him, to give him a chance. But a chance was not forgiveness. And it certainly wasn't love. He had abandoned them at birth. Now, he had to fight for every inch of ground to reclaim his place in their lives. A father who wasn't there. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel made sure to be present in his sons' lives. He attended their soccer games, showed up for school events, and even took them out for ice cream after their tests. At first, the boys kept him at arm's length. They didn't ask for his help with homework. They didn't reach out to him when something exciting happened. But slowly, they began including him. Liam would casually mention a class project he was struggling with. Noah would challenge him to a video game. Elijah would ask him random questions about life, as if testing him. Every small moment felt like progress. But there was still a wall between them. And it wasn't coming down easily. Sophia's doubts. One evening, after the boys had gone to bed, Daniel lingered in the kitchen. Sophia stood across from him, arms crossed. "You're making progress." Daniel exhaled. "I hope so." Sophia tilted her head. "But there's something missing, isn't there?" Daniel looked away. He knew what she meant. The boys still didn't trust him completely. Sophia sighed. "They're smart. They know you're trying. But they also know that you weren't there when they needed you." Daniel ran a hand over his face. "I don't know how to fix that." Sophia studied him for a long moment before speaking. "You can't erase the past. But you can stop hiding from it." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Sophia's voice softened. "They don't just need to see the man you are now, Daniel. They need to understand the man you were. The man who left." Daniel's stomach twisted. He had spent so long trying to move forward that he had never truly explained why he had left in the first place. Would they even want to hear it? Or worse, would they hate him for it? The hardest conversation. A few nights later, after dinner, Daniel sat with his sons in the living room. He could feel Sophia watching from the kitchen, but she didn't interfere. This was his moment. He took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you guys." The boys turned to him, curiosity in their eyes. Liam frowned. "What is it?" Daniel hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, he spoke the words he had avoided for 10 years. "I left because I thought you weren't mine." Silence. Noah blinked. "What?" Daniel clenched his fists, forcing himself to continue. "When you were born, I looked at you, and I didn't see myself. I saw something I didn't understand. And instead of trusting your mother, instead of believing in our family, I ran." The boys were dead silent. Even Sophia had stopped moving in the kitchen. Elijah's face darkened. "So you thought Mom cheated on you?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes. And it was the biggest mistake of my life." Liam's jaw clenched. "So you just left?" Daniel swallowed hard. "I was a coward." The words burned in his throat. "I should have listened. I should have stayed. But I didn't. And because of that, I missed everything. I missed your first steps. Your first words. I missed knowing you." Noah's hands curled into fists. "That's not fair." Daniel's heart twisted. "I know." Elijah's voice wavered. "So why now? Why do you suddenly care?" Daniel exhaled. "Because I finally know the truth. And because I can't live the rest of my life knowing I never tried to fix what I broke." Silence. Then, Liam whispered, "You should have been there." Daniel's throat tightened. "I know. And I will regret it every day for the rest of my life." Noah looked away, his eyes glassy. Elijah just stared at the floor. And Liam? Liam looked at him with hurt. With anger. And yet. With hope. You can't change the past. Daniel nodded. No, I can't. Liam took a shaky breath. But maybe you can prove you're different now. Daniel's heart clenched. I will. I swear I will. For the first time, Liam nodded. A tiny, almost imperceptible nod. But it was enough. Because it was the first sign that maybe, just maybe, his sons were ready to let him in. The turning point. After that night, something shifted. The boys didn't forgive Daniel overnight. But they asked him questions. They wanted to know about his life, about his regrets. And slowly, Daniel stopped feeling like an outsider. One night, as Daniel was about to leave, Liam muttered, "You can stay for dinner if you want." Daniel blinked in surprise. Sophia raised an eyebrow but said nothing. And for the first time in 10 years, Daniel sat at the dinner table with his family. As he laughed at Noah's jokes and helped Elijah with his math homework, he realized something. He had spent a decade thinking he had lost his family forever. But now, he had a chance to build something new. And he wasn't going to waste it, the final test. Daniel had spent the last few months proving himself to his sons. He showed up for their games, helped with schoolwork, and made time for every small moment that mattered. And slowly, he became part of their world. But there was still one final barrier. One last thing that would decide if he had truly earned his place. Their trust. The fear of losing again. Sophia watched it all unfold with a mixture of relief and caution. Daniel was trying. That much was clear. But part of her still wondered, would he stay? What if something scared him away again? What if he disappeared, leaving the boys heartbroken all over again? Late one evening, after the boys had gone to bed, she finally confronted him. "Do you understand what's at stake here, Daniel?" Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I do." Sophia crossed her arms. "No, I don't think you do." Daniel met her gaze. "Sophia, I would never." "Never what?" she interrupted. "Never leave again?" "Because that's what you promised last time, and look what happened." Daniel flinched. That was different. Sophia's voice was cold. Was it? Daniel exhaled. "I get it. You don't trust me. And you probably never will." Sophia hesitated. Then, her voice softened. "It's not about me, Daniel. It's about them." Daniel ran a hand down his face. "I know." Sophia studied him for a long moment before saying, "Then prove it." "Not to me. To them." A promise tested. The final test came unexpectedly. A week later, the boys had an important soccer championship. It was their biggest game of the year. And they wanted Daniel there. Liam, the most guarded of the three, had been the one to invite him personally. It was the first time he had ever asked Daniel to come to something. And Daniel had promised. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." But then, on the morning of the game, something went wrong. Daniel received an urgent call from work, a major crisis. His boss needed him immediately. Daniel was torn. This job was how he supported his newfound relationship with his sons. But if he missed this game, if he broke his promise, he might never get another chance. Sophia called him as he sat in his car, torn between duty and redemption. "If you don't show up today, Daniel, don't bother coming back." Daniel clenched his jaw. Then, without another thought, he drove to the game. Earning their trust. By the time Daniel arrived, the game had already started. He rushed to the sidelines, heart pounding. Liam was on the field, running with determination in his eyes. Daniel shouted his name. For a moment, Liam froze, as if he hadn't expected him to come. Then, a flicker of relief crossed his face. And Daniel knew. He had made the right choice. The game ended in a victory, and as the boys celebrated, Daniel walked toward them cautiously. Noah and Elijah were grinning. But Liam just stared at him. Then, without a word, he handed Daniel his medal. You kept your promise. Daniel's breath caught. For Liam, it wasn't about the game. It was about knowing his father wouldn't abandon him again. Daniel swallowed hard and whispered, always. A family rebuilt. That night, for the first time, Liam, Noah, and Elijah called him Dad. And Daniel felt something inside him heal. Sophia, watching from the doorway, finally let go of the last of her doubt. Because Daniel had earned his place. Not through words. Not through apologies. But through actions. And as the four of them sat together, laughing, talking, and making new memories, Sophia realized something. The past would never change. But the future? The future was theirs to build.